All right, welcome to the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. Last chance to ask your questions at our AMA, Ask Me Anything, Ask Us Anything regarding the USC Viterbi School of Engineering first year application. This is for first year students. If you're a prospective transfer student, sit tight. We're going to hold another one of these next week specifically for transfer students, but we have a lot of great attendees here in the audience. We are in a Zoom webinar for anyone that's watching on YouTube. We're not necessarily monitoring that for questions as much, but we are just taking questions from our Zoom webinar questions. What we want you to do is go ahead and start typing in your questions. Use the Q&A feature, start typing in questions, and then you have upvoting on those that are able to go. So you can always upvote other people's questions. We're going to let a couple minutes pass real quick as we do some introductions. And after we do the introductions, then we'll just start going through the questions for those that have been upvoted the most. Okay, so start typing in your questions. When you read the other questions, upvote them, downvote them, whatever you think is most important. And we will go through our questions as much as possible. So just keep getting those in. I should introduce myself first. Thanks for being here. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I'll let the rest of our staff go. We'll start with Becky, and then we'll go to Angie and Stacy and Michael.
Hi, everyone. My name is Becky. I'm the Associate Director for Undergraduate Admission. Welcome. We're really excited to have you here and answer any questions or last-minute questions that you have before the application deadline.
Everyone, my name is Angie. I'm a Senior Assistant Director, and happy Friday. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Badger. I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admission. Welcome. Happy Friday as well. Excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Cox. I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admission here at Viterbi, and looking forward to answering all your questions.
So, as I mentioned, we're just going to take your questions and live respond to them, all based on the upvotes that they get. So if you haven't done so already, you can open up that Q&A feature on the bottom of the webinar screen. You can type in your questions. You can also see what else other people have written and upvote them. We're going to answer those in the order of the upvotes. So thanks for joining us. Let's get into it right away. And I will moderate and let the rest of our staff jump in on these answers. The first one that we're going to go into is Danielle's question. Danielle, thank you for asking your question. I think you were the very first person to ask your question, so congratulations, you won the prize. It says, what do you think USC is looking for in a future engineer? Well, the good news is that's what we do. So what do we think we are looking for in a future engineer? Who wants to start us off with that?
I think that's kind of a tricky question because there's so many different things we're looking for. We're not looking for one specific type of student. We're looking for all different types of students that have different interests and different backgrounds. But I think one thing that we're looking for in future engineers or future engineering students at USC is students who are really interested and open to learning, to getting involved in research or in student organizations or some of those opportunities that USC and Viterbi have to offer. Students who want to make an impact, students who want to make a difference in the world using their sort of technological degree and actually use that to kind of improve upon technologies to actually help different communities throughout the globe. And I think those are some of the things that we are looking for. Like I said, there's a lot of different things, so I'll let other people, the rest of the counselors or admission directors kind of jump in to see what you guys are thinking.
I mean, yeah, I get asked a lot too if we're looking for like engineering experience, and sometimes they think that's what makes a good engineer, but a lot of times students actually don't have the opportunity to be exposed to engineering experience before they're applying. So don't think you have to have any engineering experience or anything like that. That has to be on your application. We're not looking for those pieces. We want to make sure that you're sort of taking advantage of the opportunities around you and sort of what's available to you.
I'll try to round this all out. All of that is correct. And Danielle, and I think in why this probably got upvoted the most is you all are working on your applications. And when you're working on your applications, you're really trying to do your best to get admitted. And that makes sense. And we really appreciate you taking this amount of time, this amount of effort to dive in there and do well. But I want to kind of just back up a little bit from this question and kind of zoom out and kind of hopefully adjust everyone's philosophical approach to the application. And let's realize that when you're in high school and you're a really great student, as almost all of you are, and you're planning on going to a great university, you've done good work, and you've probably got into this pattern of understanding how to get good grades. And as you go into each class, you'll probably will even start to think about, what am I going to do to get an A in this class? And sometimes you might even overtly ask your teacher, what do I have to do to get an A in this class? And so that pattern, you've gotten used to it. That's how you do your work. And so when you approach your college applications, you might be approaching your applications in that way, which is, what do I have to do to get admitted? Sometimes that translates into, what are you looking for? Because I'll match that in my application so that I could be admitted. And that is the wrong way to go about this. I'm not saying it's a bad question. I'm just saying that path is the wrong way to go. And so what I want you to recognize is that the point of our application, or what we are trying to do in our application review process, is get to know you. And that means that this might be a question that comes up later, and we might revisit this in a moment. But the question I've been getting a lot lately is, what do you want to see in an application? Well, we're trying to get to know you, and what's the best advice you can give me for my application? Well, that is to be authentic, to make sure that you are answering these questions to give us your best authentic self. Of course, put your best foot forward, but don't try to figure out if there's some sort of mold you're supposed to fit. We don't have a mold like that. We're not looking for one type of student or one type of contributor to our student community. At the end of this process, what we're trying to do is build out our most well-rounded student body. That does not mean we need well-rounded students. We need a well-rounded student body, which means lots of different types of students contributing in their own ways. Of course, the common denominator there is that they can do the work. So your academics will speak for themselves in your preparation. But outside of that, it's, well, who are you? What do you do now? How do you spend your time? How do you contribute to your current community? What can we project forward to the community at USC and the Viterbi School of Engineering? And then what we're going to do is compare that to other applicants and see how we can build out a class with different types of people from different types of backgrounds, and build out a really nice community of students that can support one another, where each of you are going to contribute to something, to a different project, a different classroom, a different experience in different ways. So that's a really long way of saying, I'm not looking for anything in particular. I'm also looking for everything in particular in the same way. So everything that both Stacy and Becky said ring true in that process, but you shouldn't be approaching these questions on the application or your application to be shaped in some sort of way of something that this is what we want. Take those questions at face value. We are trying to get to know you. Don't overthink them. Put in your best efforts of explaining who you are and give us all the details you can. We don't want to have any questions about who you are. We just want to get to know you, and then we're going to give it the best shot. Okay. So I hope that helps kind of round out that question as best as possible. Let's go to our next question from Christian. Christian has this question here. Thank you for this question, Christian. If you are denied admission for your first choice engineering major, would you be considered for your second choice if it is to the College of Letters? And I'm assuming you mean letters, arts, and sciences. Yes, absolutely. So basically, your application process, you can only apply to one major at USC. You can only get admitted to one major at USC, although it's confusing because the application says first choice major, second choice major. If you're thinking at all about engineering or computer science at USC, there are only engineering and computer science majors in the Viterbi School of Engineering. There are no engineering or computer science majors outside of the engineering school. So if you're thinking at all about them, that must be listed as one of the Viterbi School majors as your first choice major. If you do not list one of the engineering or computer science majors as your first choice major, we can't consider you for the engineering school necessarily. If we look at your application and say, this isn't going to work for engineering, we don't see this in this applicant pool, we don't have the ability, the university can always consider you for your second choice. And so that's why we do recommend that if you're listing engineering, computer science as your first choice, yes, please list something else outside of the Viterbi School as your second choice major so that you can be considered for the university or for that program. Okay. If you don't have any other interest, leave the second choice major blank. Okay. It's an optional element. You can still be considered open for the university if it's blank. Let's go back to our next question here. How much opportunity from Esha? How much opportunity is there to pursue interdisciplinary projects? For example, maybe I'm interested in computer science and music. So can we talk about this idea of something we call Engineering Plus?
Yeah, I think it's honestly one of my favorite things about the engineering school. because we know that all of you are interested in engineering and computer science, but we also know you have varying interests. And the cool thing about USC is we're not just an engineering school, we're a huge university. So there are programs in arts, in dance, humanities, social sciences, business, and it's built into the engineering curriculum for you to have extra space to take classes outside of engineering as well. So I would say this idea that Paul mentioned, this philosophy of engineering plus, is like one of the best things about the Viterbi school is you can take classes outside of engineering, and you can also pursue research outside of engineering. You can do clubs outside of engineering too. So you're not just limited to being just an engineering student at USC. You're not just going to be in a silo of engineering students.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate something that Becky said earlier, which is that you don't need any engineering experience to be a competitive applicant. So there are lots of different ways that you can contribute. It may be something that you're interested completely outside of the engineering school, and that's great. You can bring that to USC. So I would say that the answer to this question is really as much opportunity as you want. As much as you want to get involved in other things, that's what college is all about, and we're going to encourage you to do that.
Awesome. I want to remind everybody that is joining us, go ahead and keep putting questions into the Q&A feature. Also keep upvoting questions to get them up there. If a question's already been answered, I'd encourage you to not upvote it. Otherwise we'll have to say like we already answered that one. So please go in and review what other people are asking as we're talking. They'll give you something to do, especially if you're bored by what we're saying, and have some fun in there. This next question, Angela, advice on supplementals for Viterbi. Gotta say, don't really know exactly what you're talking about. And so I want to make sure, do you all know what are we talking about?
I'm
Supplemental
assuming
essays.
to Viterbi questions.
Go for it.
Oh, I mean, I think advice for those two questions specifically, and for any other, the essay, the other short answer questions that the university has, is just to, one, answer the question. So read the question, answer what it's asking. But also that there is, and this kind of goes along with what Paul was saying, there is no right answer to the question. The second one is about grand challenges. Which one do you think is most important and why? They're all important. So there's not one that's more important than the other. And so I think our advice is just to read the question, answer the question, and then just be authentic and honest. Like Paul said, we want to get to know you, your interests, what you think is important, why you think it's important. And then that'll just give us a little bit more insight into who you are as a student. This year more than ever, it's really hard to get to know students outside of their online application. We weren't traveling. We didn't get to meet a lot of you face to face. And so I think it's going to be even more important to kind of let yourself shine through these essays. Again, there is no right answer. There's no right answer to why you want to study engineering. There's no right answer into what's the most important grand challenge. And so I think it's really, it's really just answer those questions as honestly and as authentically as you can, so we get to know you as a student.
Yeah, Angela, I hope that's what you're asking about with those two answers. I'll add a couple things on this. The grand challenges question. Sometimes people read too much into it and think it has to be related to their major. It does not. Just what's the most interesting to you. And advice on answering the questions is all back to authenticity, as Becky said. Like, don't overthink this, guys. We are human beings. You're seeing all of us right now. We read your applications. We're trying to get to know you. The more strategy that you implement into your questions, the more obstruction there is between us understanding who you are. And so I think what you really want to do is be as authentic as possible. Of course, that means well written. We need to understand what you're saying. So make sure it is well written. Next question we'll hop in here is from Hassan. Great question, Hassan. How close is the relationship between students and professors? Who wants to jump in on that one first?
I guess I can. From what I've been able to hear from students, we work with a lot of current students as well. It's sort of how close as you kind of want it to be with your professor. Are you comfortable going into office hours? Are you comfortable emailing your professors when you have questions. What I also like about Viterbi is it sort of has this smaller school feel within a larger school. So even though USC, you can go do all the football games and you can go do all these other pieces that are part of like a larger institution, you do have smaller class sizes. You can be in a class that has 25 students or even less sometimes, depending on your major. So that relationship with your professor can kind of be how you want it to be. If you really enjoy working with this professor, you want to do research with them, that's a great relationship. This could be someone that writes your letter of recommendation for grad school or for a job or anything like that that you're applying to. So it's really kind of dependent on you and what you want to do with your professors. But the ability to have close relationships with your professors is absolutely possible with the smaller size that we have, for sure.
I may have told this story before on a webinar, but professors know you very well. That may not be a good thing in all situations. It is back when we were on campus, I've witnessed this actual occurrence happen many times where it's around 10 a.m., 11 a.m. I'm going for my fourth or fifth cup of coffee at the cafe because I can't wake up that day as normal. And I see one of the other, faculty members there. Say, hey, how you doing? And all of a sudden he turns to the student next to him and says, oh, hey, Johnny, where were you in class this morning? I didn't see you. And the white, all the color leaves their face, doesn't know how to react. These are not giant lecture halls that you see in movies where you can just kind of slip in and out of the back. Faculty want to get to know you. They engage with you and they want you to understand material. They want to talk with you. They want to get to, understand that you're understanding the material. That's why they teach at USC, because they can be engaged with students and help with that educational process. And that's why they chose to come to USC, because that's part of our process. It's part of our overall philosophy and the priority of undergraduate education. We're not just a tier 1 research institution. We're a tier 1 research institution where undergraduate education is a top priority, where classroom evaluations are built into faculty tenure review. That doesn't happen at most tier 1 research institutions. This is where we value that educational process. Does that mean that you'll like all of your faculty? Absolutely not. You're probably going to hate a few of them. And will they like you? Maybe, I don't know. Right? There's still human beings in this process. So keep in mind, relationships are strong, relationships are good. Students want to get to know their faculty, faculty want to get to know them, but this is all about building relationships. And I think that our students really build some strong relationships across their years. How easy is it to change majors between engineering?
It's super easy. If you're admitted to one engineering major, you're admitted to all. So and plenty of our students change their majors a number of times before they solidify their decision. You can talk to an academic advisor and just change your major. And that's pretty simple. Now, because the question usually comes in hand with this one, sometimes students are like, what if I'm not admitted to engineering and I want to switch into engineering? That's a little more of a process, which can take from anywhere from a semester or two to complete requisites. But that's a completely separate question. I just always like to address it because I know that question always arises for students too.
And I think a lot of times the question on how easy is it to switch, there's usually an underlining thought of, I don't know what I want to do. This is one of my favorite things about Viterbi is the understanding that 17-year-old high school students don't know a lot about engineering and don't know exactly what they want to do. Do you want to be a chemical engineer for the rest of your life? I don't know. I liked chemistry, but I don't know if that's what I want to do. And so when so understanding that you can change your major whenever you want, once you're admitted to one engineering program, you're admitted to all of them, kind of makes the application process a little bit easier on you when you're selecting that first choice major. For those of you, if you haven't applied yet, if you're still considering it, but you're not quite sure what major to apply to, just apply to the engineering program that sounds the best to you as you're submitting the application, knowing that if you're admitted to that program, you're admitted to every other engineering program. And so changing your major is really simple. And so there really shouldn't be any strategy in which type of engineering you apply to on the application because you're admitted to all of them, regardless of what you put as your first choice major.
And to add on to that, your admission chances are the same. So there really shouldn't be any strategy involved in which major you choose. And then once you get here, you can always switch your major. So no pressure on which one you choose.
You are never locked into your major. What Michael just said is really important. You do not affect your chances of admission are not affected based on what you put down. We have no impacted majors. Okay. I want to be incredibly clear about that. Choosing one major does not have an easier or worse chance of admission than another. And this idea of you understanding what engineering is a experiential process. It's something that will happen over time in the courses that you take at USC. We have no expectation that you've gone through that process prior to college. It's something that we will do with you, and our faculty will be helping you with that process. It's oftentimes that students think that they want to study something until they start taking the courses in it. And that's okay. And that's what we're here to do. And those students are still equally successful. They still graduate on time. It does not delay their graduation, which is why we bring all of the introductory engineering courses specifically to the major to the forefront. You're all going to take an introduction specifically to the discipline of your choosing in your first semester at USC. It's all about that. We don't front load prerequisites like other engineering schools do, meaning that we're not going to give you just nothing but math, science, and GEs in your first 2 years. Because all that does is delay this and make 2 years of the same question keep popping up. We want to give you the exposure and that experience in order to understand what it is you want to do. Amanda's question is next. Can we still get financial aid even if we miss the December 15th deadline? So let's stop and correct a number of things. There's no such thing as a December 15th deadline. There never has been, there never will be. So that seems like that's some incorrect information. There is no financial aid deadline for first-year applicants. We recommend that students apply for financial aid in February, early March. That's probably the best way to get that done, but that has nothing to do with the application process. We may have been confused and talk about our December 1st scholarship deadline. And so that was just for some of our top level merit scholarships, but financial aid is need-based financial aid. And there also are other scholarships that students can be considered for regardless of when you apply. Anyone else want to jump in on this one or anything else we need to add to that?
You just did like February, early March. If you're in California, if you want California aid, if you're looking for financial aid, March 2nd is the deadline for Cal Grant or the California Dream Act. So definitely March 2nd is before March 2nd is when you should apply for those pieces for sure.
Can someone put in some text to Angela's question to provide some links to the financial aid website, specifically the links for the process of applying to financial aid? If you go to financialaid.usc.edu, click on undergraduates and prospective, and then you'll see the how to apply link. It will lay out what you need to do with the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and then what Stacy was just talking about if you're a California resident, and then also additional information you might need to do. So take a look at that. Not necessary right now for need-based financial aid. Get your application in first, but that's something you'll need to do directly afterwards. And you will need your parent or guardian's help on that, as it does involve the family financial circumstances. Okay. We're rolling right along. As a reminder, we're about approaching the halfway point. We've got 42 unanswered questions. You all need to dictate this. I doubt we're going to get to 42 questions in the next 30 minutes. And so you need to upvote. You need to upvote the ones that you want answered. We're just going down in order of your votes. So get on in there. You control today's session. Choose your own adventure and upvote as you see fit. Okay. So let's get into Nathan's question. How would you describe Viterbi's community, and what's a trait that you guys focus more on when looking for future students? So Nathan, I will point to you when this is done, the YouTube page for Viterbi admission will have a recording of this. We've already answered this question. Maybe you weren't here for it, but what's a trait we focus more on looking for future students? There is no such thing. So go back and hear my really long-winded answer about how we're looking for everybody at the same time as we're looking for nothing specific. So please check that out. But let's describe the community. How would you all describe our community of current students?
This is from the students. It's a very collaborative community. So students work together in teams inside and outside of the classroom. I think our students are very involved. So if you are looking for a school where you only go to class and then go home and that's it, USC may not be the best fit for you, because the students who really come to USC and specifically Viterbi are very engaged in, as we mentioned before, research, in clubs and organizations. They're involved in the community. And so on top of going to classes, they're also involved in these different ways, and also looking for internship opportunities and job opportunities while they're students as well. So if I had to summarize in one word, collaborative. That's really what the community is all about at Viterbi.
Yeah, and to add on to that, what Paul just said about how we're not looking for anything in particular, we don't have a checklist when we're reading applications. We're not like, all right, they did this thing, so that's good, and that gets them an extra point. That's not the way that it works. So one advantage to that is that we're just able to bring in such a diverse group of students in every sense of the word. So just students doing a lot of different things. And so I think that if I had to describe the USC Viterbi community, it's just a group of polymaths that are just interested in lots of different things. Some of them come in with a ton of engineering experience. Some come in with absolutely no engineering experience, and everything in between, and lots of interests outside of engineering. And I think that's what makes our community so cool and unique and dynamic. And ultimately, it really helps them when they go look for research positions and academic positions and jobs, because they're just so interesting to talk to and just have so many things going for them.
I think that was a great answer. Let's go to Osama. Do AP courses and exams play an important role in admission? Yes, if you've taken them. And I think that's the one thing I want to say is about, this is kind of part of a question that hasn't been asked yet, which is what's the most important part of the application? And sometimes you get asked, like, how important are the essays? How important are this? And there's another question down below that we're going to get into, which is about grades. The answer is yes to all of those things. Everything is important in your application. There, and to go back on what Michael just said related to it, while we're not looking for one thing, there's no formula, right? Like he said, there's no checkbox of things we're looking for. There's not like, oh, okay, has this many, there's no such like minimum hours of community service that gets, this is not an objective or calculable process. God, I would love it if it was. To be able to put you all on a spreadsheet and hit sort, like we'd be done in minutes, if not seconds, of understanding who we admit. Our process is about reading and reading and reading and reading, and then discussing and arguing and overwriting and just overall debating what we think about students, and not who's best, but who would be a good combo, right? So it's also not about what you've done necessarily, because you've all done great things. You all deserve to be admitted. That is clear. But we only have 410 first-year students every single year. Let that sink in. So we're trying to build a small group of students in this class. Now, granted, we're not just admitting 410, right? We're admitting probably around somewhere between 12 and 1,300 every single year. But we get about 13,000, 14,000 applications. If you want to understand chances, that's kind of what your questions are related to. You should do that math and say, I got about a 10% chance of being admitted. Every one of you does. Okay. And so when APs and things like that come into play, first off, are APs offered at your high school? If they're not, don't worry about it. If they are you engaged in them? And really what the question is overall is that, are you engaged in the highest levels of rigor that you can be at your high school? Are you taking the hard and challenging classes that are going to prepare you for an even more rigorous college or university experience? And then specifically inside of those classes, are math and science courses included in them? That is important. If you've taken the exams, I do want to see those scores, because if you don't include them, I'm kind of assuming I know why you didn't include them. Just going to take a shot in the dark. You didn't include them because you didn't do well. And so that's what I'm going to assume. Okay. And also when I see really great grades and really low AP scores, something's wrong there, and vice versa. Okay. AP scores are important if you've taken them. Now, if it's not part of your curriculum, it's not part of your plan, don't worry about it. What we're trying to understand is really, are you engaged in the highest level of rigor in the context of your school? Don't worry about the school across town. Don't worry about the school you heard about on College Confidential. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just worry about your school, because that's how we can understand how to compare you against. Okay. This leads into Vani's question about how important are grades in determining who gets accepted in Viterbi engineering. Incredibly important at the beginning, and then nowhere near important very soon thereafter. Okay. Now, our application process is almost 100% subjective about all the things we talked about earlier. Who are you? What do you do? How do you spend your time? How have you engaged your community? What do we project forward about what you're going to do in our community? And that's all subjective stuff, right? But to get to that point and to get to that point of discussion, you have to meet the minimum eligibility standards. Those minimum eligibility standards are basically, what courses have you taken that will prove to us that you're prepared for our engineering curriculum? And that's very quickly. I can say that in a couple sentences. One, taking the hardest classes available to you and getting A's and B's. There should be more A's than B's. There's no GPA that's a minimum, but are you getting A's and B's? And then, are you doing really well, right? That's all that matters. Don't get into, and I don't want to talk about GPA because honestly, it doesn't matter. All of you are being graded on different scales with different weights and you all have different GPAs. It doesn't matter. So are you getting A's and B's, more A's than B's? And are you taking the hardest classes at your school? Cool. Then that's what you're doing. If you're doing those things, and that includes at least a year of calculus before you graduate, you have met the minimum eligibility standards for admission. The issue here is that out of those 13 or 14,000 applications, roughly 70 to 75% of our applicants have met those minimum eligibility standards. So first tier, do you meet minimum eligibility standards? Cool. Now we can talk about subjective. That is not a clear dropping off point. Okay. So that's not a guaranteed, we can't admit you, but it makes it really hard for us to be able to carry you through to the finish line if you haven't met those minimum eligibility standards. There's always exceptions. And I hope that if you have some sort of explanation to those exceptions or something that's gone on in your life that tells us why you haven't met those minimum eligibility standards, or maybe why you haven't taken calculus, or how something's gone wrong or a year went wrong, that's why the application allows you opportunity to explain it to us, because we're reading everybody, no matter what, because we want to understand who you are, can you do the work, and then how can you contribute. So I hope that helps everybody understand how this all works. And that's a good understanding of it. Did you all have something to add on that, or did I go too far or too little on something? Okay. Let's go back to Hassan, who has asked, what are the research opportunities for undergraduate students? Who would like to talk about research for undergrad?
Yeah, I would just start by saying there's a lot of research opportunities for undergrads. We are a large research institution. The Viterbi School alone is doing over $200 million worth of externally funded research every year, and undergraduate students are participating in that. So it's not that we have all these research opportunities, but it's only for master's or PhD students. We have undergraduate students doing research as early as first semester freshman year, and so they're able to get those opportunities. There's a lot of different ways to get those research opportunities. Some of them are scholarship programs, so if you applied by December 1st, you'll be considered for those. There's other scholarship programs that you can apply for later on, but I would say the majority of our students get research opportunities just by reaching out to faculty. So we talked about sort of those relationships that you build with your faculty throughout your 4 years, and I feel like it's pretty easy for students to build those relationships because all of our undergraduate courses are taught by full-time faculty, many of who have research labs on campus. And so taking those courses, meeting your faculty, engaging with them, striking up those conversations can lead you to a position in a research lab, in their research lab. And so, just reaching out to a faculty member who's doing research in an area that interests you. And again, it doesn't have to be research in your department. It could be outside of your department. It could be in other schools on campus, biomedical engineering students doing research at the health sciences campus where the med school is in the hospital. And so you have a lot of those opportunities, either through, again, a scholarship program or just by emailing faculty members on campus and asking them what sort of opportunities they have for undergraduate students. And like I said, every lab has undergrad students working, doing research in them in some capacity.
I think you nailed it.
Great.
Thank you. Reminder to everyone, keep asking questions, keep voting, because we're only going to answer the questions that make it up to the top in the next 20 to 22 minutes, if I'm doing my math correctly. So make sure you're controlling what we talk about. Anika asks, in the quote, describe how you plan to pursue your academic interests and why you want to explore them at USC specifically, question, what answers are the most cliche and overused? What answers are the most cliche and overused? Let me first tell you something that I think is important to understand. That question sometimes gets misunderstood. And I want you all to recognize what that's asking you is, what do you want to study at USC and why? Or why do you want to study what it is you want to study at USC? Like, why is that? That's all you're answering. We get some weird, I don't know if you guys see this a lot, but we get so many weird off the wall answers to this. I'm like, that didn't talk about your major at all. Or it went this deep philosophical of like, I am really into learning. I'm like, okay, cool. Everybody is. I get that. You want to go to college. I understand that. But like, you didn't talk about what you want to study. So what do you guys have any further advice on this, or do you have cliche and overused answers on this one?
I feel like we'd all give a different answer to this, but you don't have to like say things like, oh, I was in Mr. Ledesma's virtual info session and he said X, Y, and Z or something like that. I feel like some students like think that means we're gonna like them more because they attended an info session, which
if I read the application, it tends to give them lots of extra points if they put my name in it.
I don't like that.
I'm kidding. Yeah. By the way, yeah, big gamble, guys. If I read it, if Angie reads it, if they all read it, they probably don't like it if they read my name.
That's just my take on that. Like, you don't have to prove to us that you've been to an event of ours, like someone, I think it didn't get upvoted, but we don't care about demonstrated interest, by the way. So we don't honestly care how many info sessions you've attended or how many chats you've been to, because we have students who apply and get into USC and Viterbi who've never visited and never met with us at all, but they're able to really talk really well about why they were interested in USC and what they can contribute to our community.
And that's hard just because I know you're all looking at many schools, and some schools do focus on demonstrated interest, and so kind of trying to navigate the college process when you're looking at different schools. But I mean, just going back to what I said earlier, just answer the question. So read the question, answer the question. And again, academic interest can be your major, it can be other academic interests you have. If you're thinking of pursuing music, in that question earlier about combining CS and music, that's an academic interest. But I think the main thing what Paul was getting at is just answer the question that's asked, because then we're reading it, we're like, what question is this student answering? I don't even know what they're talking about. And then we get distracted when we're trying to read files. So
yeah, the demonstrated interest thing is key. We do not practice demonstrated interest. And Angie's point, I want to reiterate, guys, don't try to draw our attention to something because you think that's what you're supposed to do, because it will take you away from an authentic answer. It really will. Another way I see that is you go and Google some faculty member's lab, and then you write up about, like, since I was 7 years old, I've been reading about Dr. So-and-so's lab. Maybe that's true. I kind of doubt it, that you've been so engaged in USC specifically that you've been living your life through this one person's lab remotely just because you knew how to Google somebody. Granted, if that's true, cool, tell us. But like, don't try to do that, because more often than not, it is cliched to the point that I don't believe it. So we want to understand what you want to do. And if you don't know why you want to do something, there's a great way to write about that. Like, they're saying, I don't know why, but you could describe how you think something is cool, why you think it's cool, how you found it to be cool. Walk us through that journey. You are 17, maybe 18. I don't expect you to have the answers to life. I'm still figuring that out for myself. Everyone is. And we're just trying to get to know you. And we know you're at the beginning of an academic journey. You're nowhere near the middle of it. So just keep that in mind. Natalie, what does USC Viterbi have that other schools don't, other than us? What makes USC Viterbi stand out from other universities with engineering branches, other than us? I mean, who does this? Who has dance parties on Friday night with Q&A? I mean, come on. What do you guys think? Who wants to jump into this? Other than I think I just dropped the mic on this question.
Well, I think flexibility is huge. A lot of you out there have done your research. You probably know this already, but just in case you don't, a lot of engineering schools will lock you into a major and you have to stay in that major. And if you want to get out of that major, you have to apply and you have to meet a GPA requirement. you don't have to do anything like that here at Viterbi. So that's definitely at least one thing that I think really stands out, especially among top tier engineering schools, public and private. Flexibility is really key for a lot of students.
I think the ability to start taking engineering courses your first semester, so not front loading with prereqs. I mean, you still have to take math and science classes in those first semesters, but there's no better way to know if you want to be a mechanical engineer than to take an intro to mechanical engineering first semester of your first year of college, because you'll know after 16 weeks if you want to continue on with that or not. And so taking those engineering courses right away, having small classes, an average class size of 26 students per course, so you can get to meet your teachers. All of our courses taught by full-time faculty. But then, kind of what Andrew was talking about earlier is just also being part, a small program at a large institution, with all the spirit and the opportunities and the, top tier research institution, and having all of these opportunities that you can get involved in. And, we have 1,000 clubs and organizations at USC. So you'll probably find things you want to get involved in, but then you also have this small community as part of the engineering school. And then I think my last one, and then other people can jump in, but I always describe USC or Viterbi students as USC students who just happen to study engineering. You want to study abroad? Great. You want to be in a fraternity? Awesome. You want to go be part of, Young Republicans student organization? Absolutely. You're really into politics? Great. So you have you have all the opportunities that any student at USC has. You just go to engineering classes. Where at some institutions, that's very different. That the engineering side of campus is over there, and the engineering dorms are over there, and the engineering opportunities are over there, and they don't intermix with the rest of the school.
Size, resources, flexibility, program offerings, the opportunity to study more than engineering and not be locked into engineering, not be defined by engineering, all the things that everyone just said. Other engineering schools, some of them have some of those things. There's not a single engineering school that has all of those things. So just to outline, I think that's the answer of things that we have and us. Anika, what is something that stands out to you or that you find interesting in a Common App essay? Is it all right for students to discuss their major in their Common App essay? Sorry to sound like an echo chamber. Write about what you want to write about. Don't write about what you think we're trying to find. Do not try to stand out to us. That tends to go wrong. For anyone on this call, some of the craziest stories I've ever had are the ones that thought they were supposed to stand out in an application. And when people say like, oh, what was the most memorable application you read? I can never remember a positive one. I remember negative ones because there was like, that was just shocking and not in a good way. Nothing's ever shocking in a good way in the admission process. So don't try to stand out. Try to tell your story. Try to be authentic. Common App essays have multiple prompts. Pick the prompt that you want to write about, that you tell your story about. But this is not some sort of writing competition. I think I want to be clear about that. Is it all right to talk about your major? Sure. But keep in mind, the Common App essay goes to all schools. So I hope that it's the same major at every school. I know sometimes students apply to different majors, different schools. So just keep that in mind. It's all right to write about whatever you want. Just make sure you are answering the prompt. To borrow what Becky said earlier, oftentimes we're reading and I will get halfway through something and like, what is this? And I have to read the prompt and realize I don't know what happened here. And I get confused.
Can I just add real quick, like, to anyone still working on essays, because I know you are, we're not engineers. So when you start writing really technical, it's like, it shows us that you can write really well, but beyond that, we don't learn more about you. So if you start writing really technical, I think it actually sometimes loses the authenticity that Paul's talking about, because we get distracted by the fact that you were talking about some research that you did versus the experience that you actually had doing that research and what you learned, and maybe like that personal growth versus like explaining a whole abstract on a research project. I just wanted to throw that in there because we're not engineers. So it's okay if, like we've mentioned this multiple times, you don't have to prove to us that you can be an engineer through your writing. We want to read other things too as well. Because
I will outline that, it's possible that we could understand. It's not that we're not going to understand it. We could understand these things, and the real issue is automatically it's like, why are we talking about this? Like, I don't care. about, I care about you. You are not that project. You are not that project. That project doesn't tell me anything about how you will be part of our community. I think that's what's the most important part to take away there. Trisha asks, what are the opportunities that USC offer to first-year students that is unique to USC? So what do we, that USC offers to first-year students that are unique to USC? Thoughts, everyone?
Engineering Academy, I think, is a pretty cool experience for students. So in your first semester at USC, I mean, you will be taking engineering classes right away, and this is one of them. You usually have an intro to whatever department you sort of started that you're admitted to. And then you also have a program that we call Engineering Academy, where you're actually with students of all different engineering majors. So it's a great way to sort of get exposure to different engineering majors. There's usually a faculty member in that class that's not part of your department either. So again, sort of builds that exposure to Viterbi. And it sort of helps with the transition into one college and two engineering. Engineering sort of is a different way of thinking, different way of critical thinking. And so it's sort of a good introduction to those pieces too. There are upperclassmen in that class that we call academy coaches, and they serve as mentors a lot of times for our students that assist with that transition. So it's again, a great way to sort of work your way into college and into engineering for sure.
Absolutely. I'll add on to that. First year students in the engineering school are taking engineering classes from engineering faculty. That's a rarity when it comes to engineering schools. I would also add that we don't, something that Becky mentioned earlier, but to highlight here is that we do not house by major. So you don't live in an engineering dorm. We don't siphon you away and keep you on the engineering world. We hope you're making friends across the campus and not just living and breathing engineering all the time. If you want to do that, there are plenty of schools for you to go to. Please apply there. But engineering will be a large part of your life. It doesn't need to be where you live necessarily. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Plus, I mean, the question was more about USC. Most universities do the same thing. I mean, we're all about building community. The fact that we have a small campus, I think, builds a stronger community. In addition to all the different academic programs. I mean, we bring in around a little under 3,000 total first-year students every single year at the university. And so that's the university across 150 majors and 150 minor programs. This is a small to medium-sized school. So it's not like your high school, but it's not like one of these larger public institutions where you kind of can get lost in the process. We focus a lot on providing services for students to get to know one another. Pre-COVID days, that meant a lot of get-togethers and a lot of gatherings, a lot of welcome events that involve faculty in shorts, which is something you never want to see again when we open up the beginning of the year. But that, even in the COVID times, our highest priority was connecting students when that was near impossible to do. And impossible to do in person and really challenging to do over Zoom. And so over the last, 6 to 9 months, however long we've been doing this, it's all been about how do we connect students? How do we make sure that we're providing them the resources to feel like they're part of something, even though they're thousands of miles apart, because students are coming from all over the world. So connections, friendships, resources, support programs, we focus on that specifically in your first year because it's about building your community to help you be successful. And I think that's the thing that we really want to spend time doing. We're coming up on a little under 10 minutes, y'all. This is your last opportunity to get in there and vote. So you got to hit that thumbs up on these questions that you want to rise to the top and make sure that we answer them. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get to them because we are going to close this out after a full hour, which will end in about 7 or so minutes. David, your question is next here. How closely does USC look into our transcripts? Well, my eyesight's pretty good, so I usually leave it pretty far away, but some people probably go a little bit further. You all are doing okay, right? So for example, I, as well as other students here, presumably, excel in STEM-related courses, but might have a B in a class like Spanish. How is that viewed? If you get a B in Spanish, there's no way that we could admit you. I'm sorry. It's just unfortunate. I'm kidding. Take a wild guess. What's the one class I don't really care about your grade in? It's Spanish. I often make this joke that, when you look at these grades, this is why GPA isn't important. And if you see two different students and you've got, this one has 2 C's on their transcript, the rest are A's and B's. This one has 2 C's on their transcript. If this one has the C's in math related, science related stuff, and especially as you're getting into the higher courses like calc, etc., we have a lot of red flags that go on about preparation, your ability to do more of that and do well in it. This one, those C's were in freshman, sophomore Spanish. I'm not questioning their preparation for our programs whatsoever. Okay. So keep in mind, it's not about a GPA. We're looking at your courses. We're looking closely at your transcript, exactly what grades you got, your progression across rigor. More specifically, we're understanding that transcript in context of your school. Your school provides us a school report. It tells us how many classes are offered in your higher level courses. So if we see you're getting straight A's, but you're taking the lowest level math at your school, you will not be admitted. Just guarantee that right now. Okay. It's about advancing in rigor at your school. Okay. And understanding that you're doing well. Do that work. Make sure, understand that like we're doing the work for you and understanding what's there, and you're going to be understood well. AJ asks, what type of programs does USC provide for entrepreneurship and business? I'll start real quickly. Numbers of different student organizations involved in entrepreneurship. We have a lot of our students minor in business and entrepreneurial programs, or marketing and accounting programs is a very popular minor in the Marshall School of Business that goes hand in hand with engineering quite well. Plus, we have a number of different entrepreneurial competition programs, social entrepreneurship competition, the Say Entrepreneurial Prize competition. We have multiple courses devoted to engineering commercialization and technology commercialization, engineering entrepreneurship studies, developing products, developing programs. It's all across the board. Engineering is entrepreneurship. You cannot do entrepreneurship at all without engineering. So there's a lot that are out there. Anybody else want to jump in on that? I'm going to kind of go faster. Brett asks, can you tell me more about the PreMed track for biomedical engineering? Yes, it's just biomedical engineering. When you do biomedical engineering, you're accomplishing the PreMed track to apply to medical schools. And so typically the PreMed students are biomedical with the molecular cellular emphasis, because that gives you all the appropriate medical school prerequisites. And so you're taking the right classes that you need to do. And then when you're pre-med students, you get additional advising through the pre-med office at USC to apply to medical schools, because there's some counseling that needs to be done as far as like when you're going to take the MCATs, when you're going to apply, how you're going to get these recommendations and interviews done. It's a whole other process applying to medical school, but the biomedical engineers are very successful in applying to medical school and go off to do great things.
Just to add on to that as well, there is no pre-med major. Any engineering major can be pre-med if they want, but BME is perfect because all of the pre-med classes are already in there.
Great. Malak asks, is it a possibility for all the courses to be off campus next fall? I think you might mean on campus, or maybe you just mean distance. Regardless of what your question is, I cannot predict the future. I have no idea what's going to happen 8 months from now. And I don't think anyone does. If any university is telling you something, they don't know what they're talking about, because who knows what's going to happen. We are optimistic that things will change, but I've been optimistic that things will change since March of last year. And here we are. I thought we were going to go home for a couple months and be back. And here we are. So, this sucks, guys. It sucks for you. It sucks for me. It sucks for everybody. There's no way to say that. And I would love to tell you what the plans are. The plans are people will go back to campus as it is deemed safe to do so. It is not currently safe to do so. The university works very closely with the LA County Department of Public Health to determine when that will be the case. But college campuses involve a lot of shared spaces. And so this is different than just opening up a retail shop or opening up some sort of office space. And everybody's working as hard as they can to get back to campus when it is deemed safe to do so. So I don't know. Right now, spring is, we're ready to go. Ready to go have students go back when it is deemed safe to do so, but it's just not ready yet. And we don't foresee that happening anytime soon. But when it does, USC will be able to flip it on as quickly as possible. I do know that. So I'm sorry, I wish I can tell you more, but I cannot. So we'll get there when we can. Hassan asks, can you double major or major minor across colleges? Absolutely. This is what we were talking about earlier. You can do whatever you want. And so if you want to study engineering as your undergraduate degree and do dance or cinema or music as a minor, we've got multiple minors in each of these programs across the board. You can do so no matter what. So, but now granted, the more classes you add onto your schedule, the more work you have to do. And so outside looking in, it's always easy to say, yeah, I'm going to get 3 majors or 4 minors, but you don't realize that's adding up a lot of time. And I'm assuming you want to get out in 4 years. And engineering on its own is a full 4-year degree. And so keep that in mind. But students are regularly majoring in engineering and minoring in things across campus and still graduating on time. I'll ask, if you are not accepted into Viterbi Engineering, but you're accepted to another school of USC, what is the process to transfer to Viterbi Engineering, if there is any? We talked about this briefly before, but if that does happen, there is a way into the engineering school. It just takes you time to get prerequisite work done, probably an additional semester or year. Can't guarantee anything about 4-year graduation at that point, and you must do extremely well in your prerequisite classes. You can Google USC Viterbi pre-engineering, or maybe we could put a link off to it if people want to see what that process is like. It is not a plan you want to go down unless you have to. And so you want to apply to engineering, get accepted in engineering, start in engineering. If you find yourself accepted to USC, not to the engineering school, we are happy to work with you. Our academic advisors will work with you and set you up with a plan to work your way in, but you must perform incredibly well to be admitted to the engineering school as an internal admit from the university. How is innovation supported at USC? Startups, innovation. I just answered that question a lot with our internal, with our entrepreneurial answers as well. So take a look back at that. Maybe this was asked at a different time, but we just talked about entrepreneurship and business. That includes innovation, startups, our startup garage, and go to viterbiinnovation.usc.edu to learn a little bit more about that as well. And then let's see. AJ asks, I think this was a while ago, from a scale of 1 to 10, how hard would you say to get into USC? 10. I think. Or would I say 1? No, 1 is 10 easiest, or 1? What's easiest and hardest, guys?
I think 1's easiest, 10's hardest.
So it'd be 10.
Top 10%.
It's a top. Yeah, we
at 10%.
Yeah, the number you should have in your head is around, we admit around 10% of applicants, although that determines that's based on how many applications we get. Right now we're on track. Michael can tell me if with precision, about
14,000, a little more than that. So yeah.
What are you projecting? We'll put you on the record now. What's your projection? Where are we at right now?
I'm projecting 14,101.
14,101 applications for the coming year. Last year, we were just shy of 13,000. So Michael is projecting some growth here of approximately 10% this next year. Is that about right, Michael?
Yeah, about that.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. That's what I had too. So I'm honestly, just to everyone, lovely. We haven't talked about this, but I've been looking at these, and it was going to ask him in a meeting next week. Actually, where do you think we're going?
It was exactly that, right? You had the same number in your head. Yeah, I had just up of 14,000. So I think that's what we're going to be at this year, and so that would make it a little less than a 10% acceptance rate. But I don't know. We have to look at it. But so in your head, you think about 10%. That sucks too, guys. But you throw your hat in the ring, and everybody has a shot. And what we want to do is make sure that we're considering everybody. And you got to throw your hat in the ring in order for us to build the most powerful, diverse, collaborative, contributing group of students that can build a community. That's the most important thing here. And so I know it's work to put in that application, but please do so we can do that. With that, I need to close out our chat. I am so thankful for every one of you spending a Friday night with us. I hope that this was helpful to you. If you have further more specific questions, email us at vadmit@usc.edu. You can call us, not now, but Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Pacific time, 213-600-9919. That's 213-600-9919. And your application is due by January 15th. Okay, so don't wait to the last minute. Get it in. You don't have to wait for those letters of rec. You don't have to wait for those transcripts to come in right now. Just get your Common App and your USC supplement in. Letters of rec, transcripts, those things can come in later. So don't worry about getting those before you apply, or don't worry for your grades to finalize. None of that stuff. It can come in later. Okay, so anything else you all want to say before we sign off?
I put in the chat, we have a student live chat this upcoming Sunday. So if you're interested in hearing more of like the student perspective and those pieces like that, I know you heard from us and we're super cool and interesting, but they might also be interesting in a different way. So the Viterbi admission.usc.edu/virtual that has all of our live chats, all of our student live chats from this entire year so far. So it's a lot of live
Really
chats.
cool.
Yeah, and so you can see a lot of different things. We have study abroad ones. We have all these different topics. So that's a whole other perspective for you guys to see if you want to see that too.
Yeah, get to those links now. Go to those sites, watch our live chats to hear from the students. Go to the new one that's coming up that is live. And we can't wait to see your application. We want to get to know you. We're really excited about that. I hope you're all having as good of a new year as you possibly can, given today's culture and climate and all the stuff that's happening. So happy new year to you all. Thank you so much. We look forward to your application and fight on, everybody.